Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to bring you Top 5 Wednesday. Top 5 Wednesday is currently hosted by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. I will link both her channel and the Goodreads group down below so you can check out the future topics and join in if you want to. Today's topic is your favorite books from before you joined blank. So like before you joined the online book community. I originally joined the online book community as a blogger back in December of 2014. And I was picking out these 5 books / series to talk about today. I tried to pick books that I read as an adult, so none of these are series that I enjoyed necessarily when I was younger, like in middle school or in high school. These are all books that I read, or at least read part of the series while I was in college or grad school, because I'm sure at some point there's going to be another tag or a prompt that involves talking about books from like way back when I was a kid, and I wanted to reserve talking about those books and series for another time. So these are all books that I read as an adult post high school, but before I joined the book community online. I have a couple caveats that I want to go over. First of all, there are 4 series that I'm not including in this list of 5 that I feel like are kind of givens that I think that a lot of people will probably talk about or could talk about for this topic that I just don't want to include because it would take up all of my top 5. And those are going to include like the Harry Potter series, Game of Thrones series, the Hunger Games series, and Twilight. Yes, I was a fan of Twilight when I read it in my early 20s. So those I feel like don't really need to be said, but I'm just throwing it out there. Those were some of my favorite series before I joined the online community. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. The first book / series I'm going to talk about, I have definitely already mentioned on my channel before because I'm currently in the middle of rereading the whole series, and that's going to be the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. The first book in that series is The Eye of the World. It's a huge like 14 book series. I grew up with the series just like I did with Harry Potter, and I reread like the first half of the series so many times because each time a new book would come out, I wanted to be fresh. I would just reread the beginning of the series. I haven't actually read the last book. The last 2 or 3 books are actually written by Brandon Sanderson because Robert Jordan unfortunately and very sadly died before he was able to complete the series, but he passed on all his notes and everything so that another writer could finish up the series, and the writer that was selected to do that was Brandon Sanderson. So I've read 1 or 2 of the books that Brandon Sanderson wrote in this series, but I haven't read the finale, the 14th book, and by now it's been years. So I am slowly making my way through the audiobook of the earlier books in this series, but anytime I read this series, it feels like coming home. It's definitely a comfort series for me. The world building in this series is like on the level of Game of Thrones and Brandon Sanderson books, and there's just like so many connections to be made throughout the whole series, and it's definitely a good series for rereading because you make a lot of new connections between things that happen and between characters as you reread them. Anyways, I've rambled on enough about that series, but the Wheel of Time series is like one of my all-time favorite series ever since I was like in high school, and it definitely had to be on this list. The second series, book / author I'm going to recommend is the Chronicles of Chrestomanci by Diana Wynne Jones. I don't know if it's Wynne, Wine, I say Wine, but it's probably Wynne because I usually guess wrong at those things. But Diana Wynne Jones. She's been one of my favorite authors for a really long time. I started out reading her like Dalemark Quartet series. I've read a lot of her work, but she's written so much stuff that I definitely haven't read all of it. But out of all of her work, I think I really enjoy the Chronicles of Chrestomanci series. It's actually a bunch of different shorter stories put together into 2 or 3 volumes, and they're all kind of tied together because they take place in the same universe, but it's a world that has multiple parallel universes, which I love, and there's magic involved. I just love her writing. She's definitely a YA author, but I feel like her books are complex and sophisticated enough to appeal to like any reader. Basically, I would recommend anything by Diana Wynne Jones. Like I said, her Dalemark Quartet is really good. She also wrote the Dirkholm series, and the Howl's Moving Castle series is also written by her. Anything by her is absolutely great, and she definitely needed to make my top 5 list. Next on my list is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. That trilogy is the only thing I've read by Robin Hobb, but I already know that I'm going to love anything that she's written. The first book in that trilogy is The Assassin's Apprentice, and I just remember really falling in love with the characters and this world, and I enjoyed the whole trilogy. I know I read all 3 of them. The rest of her books are definitely on my like long-term TBR. Not sure when I'll get to them, but I plan to at some point. Next on my list is another series that I probably can't pronounce correctly, but it's the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. I only read the first 3 in that series. The first one being being His Majesty's Dragons. This series was my introduction to Naomi Novik, so I knew of her as an author before her book Uprooted came out within the last year or so. A lot of people on Booktube were reading Uprooted last year. I actually read this dragon series years ago, and by now she's released more books in the series that I haven't read, but it's a really cool series. It's like an alternate historical fiction that's set in the time of the Napoleonic Wars, except with dragons, and these dragons actually like participate in the war, and they're intelligent dragons, which I think is always so cool to read about. It's a very unique take on dragons and adding dragons to like our historical world that I've never seen before, and I really enjoyed that series. I do hope to finish out the series one day. It's not really high on my TBR right now because it's been so long since I read the first 3 books in the series. Alright, and number 5, the last book/series I want to talk about today is the Bartimaeus trilogy. This is by Jonathan Stroud. The first book in the series is The Amulet of Samarkand. I read this series while I was in grad school. It was summertime and I actually had, some free time to read, and I was really itching for a fantasy, so I picked this one up. I think it's a fantasy. It definitely has magic in it, but I don't remember if it's set in like the real world. I think it might actually be set in our world, but like in a historical setting with magic. It has jinn or jinni or genies. I'm not sure which version of that word they use in this book, but it has that sort of magical element, and the main character is learning magic himself. But I just remember really enjoying this series. I read it all in one summer. It definitely made a lasting impression on me. And Jonathan Stroud is not an author that I really have heard mentioned on Booktube, so it was another reason why I wanted to include that series in my top 5. If you've read any of these books or series or authors that I've mentioned in this video today, let me know down in the comments what you thought of them. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more bookish content. That's all I have for now, so until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye! And that's going to be the the Temeraire is the Amulet of Samarkand or something like that. I don't know how to say it. Samarkand, because it's a genie book. There's genies in it, or jinn, or it has jinn or jinni in it. If you have read any of these books, alright, why can't I do this? Bye!